everybody. Welcome back to Men Need to Be Heard. It's Dan, and hey, I've been away for a while. Took some time off, but I am back, and I am super excited to have a very special guest on today. I just actually met him in the last few days. A mutual friend of ours connected us, and we had a good chat the other day, and I said, you got to come on my podcast and talk about your situation. And it's, to be honest with you, having worked with men for well over 2 decades now, my guest situation is one of the tougher ones that I've ever heard. So I'm going to bring him on to talk about it, share what his experiences are, and just kind of have a chat about it all. So let me bring him on. Hello, my friend, Jim Sisco. Jim is a business owner, the author of an amazing book called The War Journal. We'll talk more about that later on. And a veteran of both the Marine Corps and Navy. And I was teasing him the other day because for those of you that listened before, I grew up in a military household. My father was Marine Corps. My uncles were Navy, and they used to get drunk every Saturday night and tease each other. And my father's famous saying was the Navy was the transport arm of the Marine Corps. So I always kind of like to point that out. But Jim is wearing a Navy shirt today, so I guess I got to favor the Navy. What do you say, Jim? How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well, thank you, and really appreciate you having me on your show, and really look forward to just having a great discussion today.
Awesome. So, as I said, you're a business owner, author of the War Journal, a best-selling author, I might add, and a veteran. Can you just tell us a little bit more about yourself, a little bit about your history, your past, who you are, that type of stuff?
Yeah, I'm uncomfortable doing that, but I'll go ahead and just kind of give a little highlights throughout my life. So I joined the Marine Corps when I was 18 years old, and really was just a troubled youth and didn't really have a lot of direction. Probably the best decision I ever made. Went into Marine Reconnaissance Special Forces. Uh, After a couple deployments, went to Desert Storm. Was in Desert Storm, was one of the lead elements for 2nd Marine Division. Uh, did my time, got out, really, because I learned some valuable lessons, and we'll talk about that in the book that I wrote. And went to college. Got my undergraduate degree in economics and political science. And while I was in college, I decided that I would pursue a career in the military and go back into the Marine Corps. For a number of reasons, it didn't work out, and wound up joining the Navy. And I think it was a really good decision. Spent another 18 years in the Navy. Did 3 deployments to Afghanistan, multiple deployments to Iraq and Ethiopia and Somalia, and it was just a great time. I was at the military liaison for President Karzai. Did some amazing things, and just enjoyed my time. But one thing I did is I learned a lot of lessons while I was in the military and in the Navy and through the deployments. And I decided when I got out that I was going to start a business, and I started my own company. And it was really my passion. I've been doing that for the past 8.5 years now. So that's just a little about me, and I don't want to talk too much about that. But
Well, I appreciate your humility, but I want to say to you, thank you for your service. Thank you for all you've done for our country. I cannot say thanks enough, the sacrifices that you've made in your life, and I truly appreciate them, and I'm sure my listeners do as well. So thank you. So as I kind of talked about earlier, when you shared your story with me, it was honestly one of the most nightmarish stories I've heard of dealing with family court in my 20 odd years of doing this. And, one of the things that one of the reasons I have this podcast is to help educate men and open their eyes to what can happen to them. You heard Jim talk about his background. He's a very high class man, stand up guy. You don't get where he was in the military by not being a stand up guy. They're not going to let somebody who, let's just say is not quite there, I'm trying to put it as politely, be in the position that he is. So he's a great man. But having said that, and all that he's done for this country, you've been through hell, let's say, and I want you to give you the opportunity to, first of all, talk about how you came into family court, whatever you want to share on that, and first of all, your first experiences, what that was like for you.
Yeah, let me start by saying that I've done 4 combat tours, and what I've been through was probably more difficult than any of my combat tours. And the way I talk about it is when I was in the military, I had my training, I had resources, I was prepared, I had my teammates, and I could do anything. I felt invincible. When you are thrown into the family court system, you are you're afraid, you're exposed, you're vulnerable, and you don't have the resources. You have to rely on people, and what happens is you almost start to doubt yourself and your abilities, and you start to things start to erode, and you question yourself, and it becomes a very difficult time in your life. So I want everybody to know one thing. I've done combat tours, and I've done some very difficult things, but the family court system and what I've been put through and what I'm currently going through has been the most challenging thing that I've had to face in my life. So that being said, I guess if you want, I can go ahead and kick off and talk about my situation.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of one point that I want to highlight quick, and you and I talked about this the other day when we were chatting, is I've talked with many veterans who've been through combat and horrific scenarios. Almost universally, I can think of maybe one exception to all the vets that I've talked to. They've said that family court and dealing with that was far harder than anything they faced while serving in the military. And not just like barely either, like significantly harder. So that's a very key point that you mentioned that I want to highlight because a lot of us who I never served in the military, and it's one of my regrets in life, but I have talked with enough of you to know the hell you've been through. And when you understand that as bad as all that was, to know that going into family court was worse, that says it all. And that's something that if you're watching this podcast, if there's one takeaway for me, I would tell you is that understand that Jim has served this country valiantly, but as he said, it was a struggle, and it is a struggle for family court. So having said that, sorry if I'm pushing you a little bit, but I do want to make that point to people because a lot of guys struggle with the belief that, I'm struggling dealing with family court. It's me. There's something wrong with me. It's not. All men go through this universally. So having said that, Jim, why don't you go ahead and talk about, going into family court and a little bit of your story on that.
Yeah. Before I talk about the family court, let me go ahead and give you the background.
Okay.
I got married when I was 40 years old, a little older in life. And I thought that was a great decision because I was able to choose, the woman that I really thought that I wanted to be with. I was financially stable. I had built enough human capital that I could be a great father because that was one of the things that shaped my identity. I grew up in a household where my father was married 3 times and my mother was married 4 times, and I had experienced, extreme parental alienation on both sides, and I really wanted to be a stable father, a great father, and have a loving family. So I got married and deployed right after the marriage, and my wife, ex-wife, was pregnant. She just had the twins, and that created some pressure and stress in the relationship. But about 3 years into the relationship, I found out some information, and I really changed my views and perspective on my ex-wife. And I went to her family with my concerns, and I was really contemplating, getting a divorce. And there was a lot of discussions, and I decided to stay in the marriage, and I did, and I was faithful, and I was a great husband and a great father, provider, the typical things, going on vacations, twice a year, skiing in the winter, beach in the summer, kids had everything. And I had a falling out with her parents about 2.5 years ago, and because of the issues that I faced early on in the marriage that I kind of just put aside. And they bubbled up. And one night at dinner with my children at the dinner table, my ex-wife said, "Hey, I'm going to take the kids to my parents' house this weekend." And I said, "No, you're not without me going." And she got up and said, "I want a divorce."
All right.
And
Can I interrupt you for 1 second right there? I'm sorry.
yeah, yeah,
She did this in front of the children
yeah,
at the dinner table.
at the dinner table and walked out.
Wow. Okay. I'm just going to let that simmer for just a moment for the audience to take in, because it kind of blew my mind that it's kind of foretelling what then happened. So sorry for interrupting you, but go ahead, continue on.
No, it's okay. So for me, it was pretty, kind of comical in a way. And as she was walking by me, I said, "Keep it classy, San Diego," from Anchorman. And that's the way I've handled everything. I don't really, obviously I get mad and I get upset. Everybody does. It's human nature. But, somebody told me when this first started, this divorce will define your character if you let it, but how you manage this will really define your character. And that's what I've, kind of stuck to this whole time. And so anyway, when I learned, she went nuclear. She took the high order. And what I learned later on, that this was all calculated and planned.
Mm-hmm.
And when I preparing for our podcast, I read through the divorce decree, and you can see the timeline that she built. There's no evidence of anything for 9 years of our marriage, and then all of a sudden she starts documenting things for the last 6 months. And these documentations are very trivial, like he yelled at me, and or he did this, or he pushed me. So you look at 11 years, 10 years, 10 and a half, 11 years of marriage, and there's no physical abuse, no emotional abuse, no nothing. And then all of a sudden it's a tsunami of accusations. So it was just kind of like foretold the story. So I have to lawyer up, and I have to do all the games. And here's the most interesting piece of this. My ex-wife signs a pende lite order and gives me primary physical custody of 2 of my 3 children. So basically, she knowingly separates the children from each other and gives me physical custody of 2 of the children. So I'm raising the twins by myself during the COVID-19 pandemic. And the entire time, my ex-wife is isolating the children from each other and from, my youngest daughter from me, which was disturbing. And I try to do everything I can to keep everybody together, and especially the children, and one of the most troubling things that I experienced was I get an email from my lawyer at the time telling me that my youngest daughter, who was in my ex-wife's care, threatened to kill herself, hurt herself with a knife. And my ex-wife didn't even call me or tell me. I found out like 6 or 7 days later.
Wow.
And, yeah. So, that really defines kind of, what was going on and transpiring. Now, 10 days later, it's my youngest daughter's birthday. It's in February, and trying to bring her presents, trying to contact her. Ex-wife hanging up phone calls, not receiving phone calls, text messages, anything. So, my kids, Ryan and Tabitha, are like, "Let's go see Samantha." We go over there on her birthday, and the kids go run up to the door, and with her presents. And my ex-wife and my daughter are in the house, and she won't open the door.
To your children, wait, if I can interrupt you again, sorry. To your children, she won't open them. Not you, your children. So they're your youngest daughter's brother and sister. She's not even allowing that child access to them.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Amazing to me.
Well, so let me, as an aside, I had started videotaping some of these, things that were going on, because I know they were so egregious. And I was like, when I go to court, I need this as evidence.
Yep.
And I actually posted a couple of TikTok videos where the kids were, where this is the actual event that occurred, and the kids are going to the house and she won't let them in. And this happened on her birthday. And then on the following day, my kids were like, "Come on, let's go back." And I said, "I don't think it's a good idea." And we went back, and the same thing. So, to get back on track, we go to court, and I represent myself pro se. And I do this because I have become so frustrated with my lawyers acting as parent coordinators, charging exorbitant amounts of money just to do some of the simplest things, coordinate activities. And here's a funny story. So I have major back surgery done. I call and text my ex-wife. I tell her I have back surgery and I'm taking care of the kids. She offers no help. And it's the same day as a custody exchange with my youngest daughter. So, at 6 o'clock, my ex-wife brings my youngest daughter to my home, and I just had major back surgery. The medication's just worn off. The pain relievers are worn off. I am hurting. And my ex-wife claims that I climbed into the car, pulled my daughter out, and ran into the house with her when she was crying.
Wow.
She calls the police. The police come, and they have their body cam footage, and things I'm learning. I submit a FOIA request. I get the body cam footage.
Yep.
And I posted that on TikTok, and you can see I could barely walk. And why am I telling these stories? Is because I was totally unprepared for what she was about to do, what she did, and what she has done, and what she continues to do. And most men are. We want to protect our children. We just want to do our thing. We want to be able to live our lives, and we're not prepared for the extreme measures that a lot of women take. And they're very highly emotional people. And sometimes they don't think logically or clearly. And I'm not saying this about all women.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of my ex-wife, this is what I experienced. And you don't know how to deal with it. Having the police called on me 6 times for the most trivial things, and they come out and they knew me. If you watch the body cam footage of on the TikTok post, they're like, "Oh, hey, I saw you last week." And I'm like, "Oh, hey, how's it going?"
Yeah.
But anyway,
I'm kind of chuckling about that because I had similar experiences. I got on a first name basis with not only the patrolmen but the detectives in my area, and they're like, "Look, we got to show up. We know it's BS." I mean, what they'll say to me personally versus because I tried to subpoena some of them into court. They get very anxious when you do that. But if we may, I just want to kind of backtrack a little bit here and highlight a couple of things that you mentioned because I think these are key points for the men listening to this podcast to take away, which is one, you mentioned how she was in effect preparing for this over a period of time. So you've been together, I think you said 10, 12 years at this point. But she's all of a sudden, you see documentation suddenly roughly 6 months before the separation. That is common. That tells me, and without knowing anything more about the story, she either talked to a lawyer or she talked to a domestic violence shelter because that's what they'll tell a woman to do. They want to build that case so that they can blindside you. They want to, you mentioned the nuclear option, which is often to get a TRO, temporary restraining order, to get you out of the house. I don't think that was your situation, but it is a very, very common situation. And it's a he said, she said, and it's an ex parte order. She walks in, she's got her list of things that she's compiled over however long it is. Well, Your Honor, he did this, this, and this on these days. I am afraid of him. The 5 magic words I always talk about. I am afraid of him. TRO is instantly issued. And that's a key point that I don't care how good your marriage is, you need to keep your eyes out for that. The other thing I wanted to backtrack on with you is you mentioned how you had taken your children to see their sister on her birthday, and obviously didn't happen. I know I don't want to get too personal with it, but share what you will. How were your children feeling when you went back home that night? Did they have any reaction? Did they say anything to you?
Yeah, if you watch the TikTok video that I posted, it's pretty funny because the reaction is quite telling. This has been, my ex-wife had been alienating them for a number of months. And, my daughter gets in the car and I'm like, "Hey, I'm sorry." And they go, "That's okay. We knew it was going to happen." So at this point, my children had really developed a tolerance to this because of her behavior and the pattern of behavior that she established and the alienation that she had done. They were kind of numb to it. And what did we do? We just went back. We went home. We cooked dinner. And we had rugby practice. I coached the rugby team. Both of my son and daughter played. I coached them. So I tried to keep a very the nucleus together. And anytime my youngest daughter would come, we would welcome her in and do things and activities together.
Can I ask how old the children that were with you at the time? How old were they at the time?
So the twins were 11 and my youngest daughter was 9.
Okay. So they're still fairly young, but they were aware of what was going on. And they had a good understanding at that point. And a point I want to make with that is to say to everyone watching this, don't think you're hiding it from your kids, because you're not. Okay. I don't care how good you are. My kids told me the same thing. Dad, we knew everything, because I did everything I could to keep them out of it. And later on, my oldest daughter and I had a really good sit down one time. And she's like, I know you did everything you could, but we knew exactly what was going on.
Yeah, and I know that I'm going to have that conversation with my children in the future, but it hurts now with the situation I'm in and what I have to deal with. And my biggest concern is that the way my ex-wife is raising my kids right now without my influence in their life is detrimental to their future success. And we can talk about that later, but what I want to do now is I want to talk about have the story progress to really understand.
Yeah, that's where I want to go. So at this point, you have 2 of the children. She has 1. You've had issues. Police have gotten involved. All that. That's where I wanted to go too. Let's take the next step. So what happened next?
So I have this overwhelming amount of evidence. I have 2 years of text messages where over 55 examples of alienation of the children and myself. My youngest daughter threatening to commit suicide. The videos of the not allowing them to see each other, and just this preponderance of evidence. And I'm like, I'm going to do this myself. I'm gonna represent myself. This is a no-brainer. This is a slam dunk. And I prepare and I do an incredible job in my preparation. I use all of the skills and knowledge from being an intelligence officer, running a business, and I go to court and I think, this is it. This is easy. Unfortunately for me, the judge who ruled in my case was a wild card. Mm-hmm. And here is something you can never prepare for in family court. You do not control the court system, and you do not know who is going to rule in your case. You can prepare all you want, but it is really the decision of an individual who you've never met, who knows nothing about you, and who has his own worldviews and experiences that he or she draws from to make a determination on your children's lives and your life. Mm-hmm. So the judge who ruled in my case is Judge Thomas P. Mann. And Judge Thomas P. Mann had a great reputation and was just, was a brilliant judge. Everybody had, the utmost respect for him. And his daughter was murdered in a very, in a terrible way, and something that I would never wish to happen to anyone. Her male college roommate took a plastic bag and shoved it down her throat, took another plastic bag and put it over her head and duct taped it around her neck, and she died of asphyxiation.
Horrific.
Tragedy.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely horrific. And obviously is going to affect anyone that has to deal with that.
Yeah. So Judge Mann, he takes a leave of absence and goes through some therapy, and I'll talk about the therapist who treated him, which is the same therapist who's now treating my children. Goes through some therapy, takes a leave of absence, comes back, and what does the court do? They assign him to family court. Probably not the best idea in the world. And Judge Mann, in his time in family court, has made some of the most egregious rulings imaginable, and not just against myself. And when I spoke with lawyers and counselors and therapists after his ruling, Nobody wanted to take my case. Everybody said that he's a wild card. You never know what's going to trigger the guy, that they never want to get in front of him. And, this is after the fact. So let me tell you what happens. So I go to court and, I do my best. I don't know procedure. And I'm going to tell everybody out there, do not go to court without a lawyer. You can have the most overwhelming amount of evidence and you can have everything stacked in your favor. If you don't know procedure, you can't admit evidence. You can't, question yourself. You're setting yourself up.
Another one to point out is you don't know when to object or how to properly object. Because I was like you. I was well prepared. I had a judge in family court tell me I knew the law better than the guardian ad litem that I was opposing. But having said that, all the studying I did, I absolutely, in a custody case, would have a lawyer. I think it's when you're dealing with something like that, the littlest thing could make all the difference in the world, especially when you're dealing with a judge who, well, let's just say he's not doing quite the job he should be. Continue, my friend.
I'm going to be very honest. He's not fit to be, to be a judge, or he shouldn't be ruling on cases like this.
Right.
The other thing, let me circle back to, is not only that you don't know procedure and how to object or how to admit evidence, which I overcame a lot of those barriers. The pressure and stress that you are faced with when cross-examination and being questioned, things like that, you can't take notes and do all the things you need to do and prepare. So the other main point that I want to bring up is that when choosing a lawyer, do your due diligence. Find a lawyer with a good reputation. Find a lawyer that is very well versed in family law, that has a good reputation, and the most important thing, that you can get along with. Because there are some adversarial things that I've experienced with the 5 lawyers that have represented me that make it it's a toxic relationship.
The way I've always put it, because I agree with you 100% on everything you just said, you need to take your time, do due diligence, get referrals, meet with these lawyers. Don't take the first one that comes along and say, yep, that's the one. Meet with 4, 5, 6. The other side benefit, by the way, is anyone you meet with, your ex can't then use because it's a conflict of interest. It's a nice little weapon to have. But to your point, you need to find a lawyer you can trust. And again, I'm not military, you are, but I would equate it to, would you want this person in your foxhole? Because that's the terminology I've used before. If you don't feel that level of trust in your lawyer, that's not your lawyer. Because they literally are in charge of your next however many years it is with your kids. Yes, the judge makes the decision, but the lawyers are what bring it to the judge to make that decision.
Yeah, and I don't want to speak badly about the legal profession, because a lot of my friends are corporate lawyers and business lawyers, but they'll even tell you that family lawyers are pariah. They are. They're pariah, and they're not knowledgeable. They are just the scum of the legal profession. And they're just bloodsuckers, and they prey upon people in the worst times in their life. And you need to recognize that and understand that if you're going through a divorce. These people, they are not going to be on your Christmas card list 10 years from now. They do not care about you. It is all about the money and billable hours. Mm-hmm. And they are relentless in their pursuit of money.
I couldn't agree with you more, unless you find a good one. That would be the exception. Yes. I eventually found one, and she was on my Christmas card list. I've lost contact with her now, but she was one of the few, like you talk about, they're bloodsuckers. They'll look to charge you. Remember, if you call them up whining, they're going to bill you for a minimum 7 minutes at, say, $400, $500, $600 an hour, right? My lawyer was like, no, I'm not talking to you. And she would literally hang up on me, because there were times I needed to vent and I would call her. And she's like, dude, go talk to a therapist. And I loved her for that. In retrospect, as I look back, she was looking out for me, right? She's not a therapist. She's a lawyer. There are some very good ones. I've had good ones on the podcast. That said, the overwhelming majority of them, not so much. And it is, and I like you, I've talked to many different attorneys at all different levels. I worked in a law firm for a couple of years as an IT director. I talked to all of them. They wouldn't even do family law because they just despised the whole process. And a funny story, just to kind of relate to this, is that guardian ad litem I referenced earlier. When my attorney had to go in and this gal is standing there spouting off, we come out of the courtroom because my attorney was just literally laughing at her, and so was the judge. And she said, "You have to understand something, Dan. To be a guardian ad litem means you can't make it as a lawyer because they get paid nothing, right?" She said, "They are the ones that not only finished last in law school, but probably shouldn't have graduated, barely scraped by passing the bar, and can't make it in the real world." There are exceptions to that, but the majority of them, that's what they can do. I mean, if you go get a law degree, you should be making 2, 3, 400,000, right? You would think. Some of them are getting paid 50. What does that tell you? All right, sorry, I had to pontificate on that because I think it's important stuff to share. Continue on with, so you're at this point, you still have the kids, but you're now in front of this judge. I'm assuming it's over custody and stuff like that.
Yeah, we're working through the divorce. I'm still in the house. I have the kids. She's trying to do everything to, on a financial side. But biggest issue for me is the custody. So we go to custody trial, and like I said about Judge Mann, and I start off, with my opening remarks and really deliver a powerful narrative that kind of lays out my strategy and talks about introduces some of the evidence. And so we start, and I can tell immediately that the judge is perturbed that I don't have a lawyer. And just, you could see his mannerisms, and you can see how he's looking at me, and, and I used to run, human. So I'm not stupid. I see what's happening. I start to cross-examine my ex-wife, and I take a deep breath. I'm behind the podium. I prepare myself, and I say, "Good morning, Liz." And, before I deliver my first question. Mm-hmm. And he yells at me, "You will abide by court procedure. You will call her by her proper name. You will address her as Mrs. Sisco. Do you understand me?" And it felt like I got punched in the gut, kicked in the junk. I don't know. I was like, what the hell just happened? And, I was like, I had to calm myself. I take a breath. I was like, Roger, I kind of revert back to my Marine Corps training and my, military training. I looked at him. I'm like, "Roger that, sir." And so anyway, I start my cross-examination, asking questions. And, after 2 or 3 or 4 questions, I started getting comfortable again. I go, well, wait a minute, Liz, you said this earlier.
Uh-oh.
And
you used her name again.
The judge goes, "That's it. One more time and you're in contempt of court. Do you understand me?" And not only the way he said it, but the tone and it was out of character for any judge. So anyway, the whole day is just a nightmare for me. I mean, by the end of the day, I am like, just at ends. And I say to him, as we are getting ready to adjourn for the day, I said, "Judge Mann, I have a question." He's like, "What is it, Mr. Sisco?" And I said, "Can I have my kids testify? They want to come to court." And he looked at me and he said, "Mr. Sisco, that's the nuclear option. I wouldn't advise it. It never goes well." And, I kind of went, all right, well, I'm not doing too good. I went home, I talked to the kids, we had dinner, and over dinner we talked about it. And they said, "Dad, we want to go to court. We want to testify. We don't want to live with mom. We don't, for all the things that happen." Anyway, so the next day I make a decision. I call the principal, so the kids aren't going to be in school, and take them to court. Had a chaperone waiting for them the whole day while I was inside. And we go into court and we kick off everything. And the Judge Mann, looks outside the courtroom. He sees the kids and goes nuts. Stands up and goes, "There are kids outside of my courtroom. Whose kids are, what's going on?" And I'm like, "Your Honor, I brought my kids to testify." And he goes, and this is where it kind of got cloudy and fuzzy for me, because I didn't know what was going on. And he adjourns the court, and runs out of the courtroom. And 5 minutes later, he comes back in. He brings the other attorney up. They start talking. I don't know what's going on. And the bottom line is they don't allow my children to testify. And at this point, the judge is just got daggers coming out at me.
Yeah, there's a couple points. That one thing I want to ask you: did your children at this point have a guardian ad litem to represent them? So, because normally that's what, at least in my state at the time, New York, they would have appointed one. So if the kids want to testify, you have them speak with their guardian, and they then drive the process, which. Again, in retrospect, I mean, hindsight's 2020, right? But maybe that might have been a better approach. But a couple key points to make is, addressing your ex by her first name. Is it proper court procedure? Let's be honest. No, it's not. You're supposed to use the proper name. But how the judge responded to that, he needs to understand as a judge that, yes, you are representing yourself. You don't know procedure. And he's got to give a little leeway there. And he just simply should have said, Mr. Sisco, proper, decorum in my courtroom is to address anyone on the stand by their proper name. That in that type of tone or some variation thereof. And you're kind of foretelling what's coming, because I know the history behind it. But that he jumped on you right then and there is improper. It really is. But these judges are gods in their courtroom. They can do whatever they want, and they know no one is going to hold them accountable for it. So, and then the other point that I want to make, and again, I'm not a lawyer either, so don't take anything I'm saying as getting legal advice, but this is an instance where having a lawyer with you might have helped, right? Because as you look back on it, go ahead.
Yes and no.
Okay.
And here's what I'm going to argue, because the family court system, lawyers do not want to challenge judges.
No, so they do not.
They may push back a little and say, hey, Your Honor, can we have some discretion here? Or, Your Honor, can I take a recess? But they're not going to go, hey, Your Honor, your behavior is inappropriate. They'll never say that.
They will never say that. You're 100% right on that.
Because they have to be in front of that lawyer 3 weeks from now or 2 weeks from now for another case.
Yep.
So let me go back to, because this is really the crescendo is building up to what happens.
Okay.
So I'm presenting my evidence, and I'm like really drilling home my points. And the judge is arguing like these minutiae points to me. Like, Mr. Sisco, you said that you took the children to Texas for a vacation and you stayed with your brother's house, and your ex-wife called and you said that there was a 2-hour time difference. Mr. Sisco, isn't Texas 1 hour difference? And I'm like, why is he arguing these, and I'm like, yes, Your Honor, I'm sorry. It was 1 hour difference, And anyway, we're getting ready to go for lunch. And I said, Your Honor, I have a question. And he's like, what is it, Mr. Sisco? And I'm like, my kids, they're here. What am I supposed to do with them? He goes, I don't care what you do with them, but they better not leave this courthouse because they're not going home with you today. And I sat there and was like, what? How is this possible? So I go down to the cafeteria, I take my kids down there, we eat lunch, and they knew I was upset. And they're like, what's the matter, Dad? And I said, hey, listen, kids, I don't think this is going well. And I want you to understand that I've done everything I can, but you need to be prepared to go home with your mom today. And they're like, we don't want to go home with her. Dad, please don't let this happen. And I'm like, hey, listen, I'm going to try everything I can. I'm going to do the best job I can. They're like, we know you are, Dad. And, and I have, pictures. My friend was with me, my business partner, and he's taking pictures of me. And you can see like my hair is a mess. I'm like really, oh my God, you can see the stress on my face because I'm trying to just have a good time with my kids. So we go back up, and long story short, he gives his ruling. And he, in his ruling, was methodical in the way he just made sure that he could detail all of the aspects of the court procedures, of the reasons why you have to give custody, section 1, section 2, one by one. And it was like the way he did it was just disgusting. He gave full legal custody of all three children to my ex-wife, limited my visitation and custody to 30-minute Skype calls on Sundays, that he gave my ex-wife permission to monitor and end on with her own discretion, made me go through a 14-week parenting course, take a forensic psychological evaluation, undergo anger management training, and pay $25,000 in legal fees.
I'm actually speechless right now. I'm speechless. And this is, by the way, this is the second time I've heard Jim relay this to me. I was speechless the first time. I think I'm even more speechless now because, again, I'm not a lawyer, but I have gone in with many guys to support them in family court, help them out as I could. And this is why I say this is one of the most horrific cases that I've heard of, because I want the audience to take a step back for just a moment. You have had custody of your twins for how long at this point?
A year.
So a year. Keep in mind that courts in general do not like to move children around. Once you have custody for a period of time, and it's not set in stone, but I can tell you right now, someone who's had custody for a year, it's damn near set in stone, unless you've proven abuse, that you're going to retain custody because they don't want to switch the kids. They don't want to make it.
Yeah. So now let me interrupt you for a second.
So, go ahead.
This is the point I want to make. Now you have this judge who makes this egregious ruling. How did he? What was it based upon?
Well, this was the question I was going to ask you. Is at this point you've gone to lunch. He's already told you what he's going to do. I'm assuming there was more court time after that. Was there any evidence presented at this point and I know it's tough to be honest about it from yourself, and like, because you're stunned at this point, but as you're sitting in that courtroom, is there any evidence that you can say at the time, oh crap, he's right in any way, shape, or form? Or was it that obvious? And I think I know the answer, but was it that obvious that he's just out to get you?
Yeah, so this is where I'm going to go back to.
Mm-hmm.
He predicated his ruling on the idea that I was alienating the children from their mother. And everything he did in his ruling went back to alienation. And he said that this was the most egregious case of parental alienation that he had ever seen. And it was tantamount to child abuse. Now, there were no expert witnesses. There was no expert testimony. There was no evaluations from therapists. My ex-wife had her father and her best friend testify, and her father perjured himself by saying that when we were in King's Dominion, that he saw me slap my son in his face 3 times because he wouldn't get on a ride. That's the only thing they had as evidence.
Mm-hmm.
They had no expert witnesses, no expert testimony, no psychologist, no therapist.
And that's a point I want to make on that, Jim, because my experience, again, I keep having to say it, I'm not a lawyer, but I've been in the courtroom enough times. I've seen enough of this to make an evaluation as that judge did. Now, he's a lawyer. You have not mentioned he's got a psychology degree or any training in psychology.
Qualified.
Exactly. That's where I was going to go. He's not qualified to make this determination based on what he's hearing in the courtroom. Because as you mentioned, it's he said, she said. I always put it that way, right? I get judges are in a horrible position. I would never be a family court judge. But they need to rely on experts, right? So let's just, I know you're not, but let's just assume you were guilty of all these things. Where's the proof, right? You can't use evidence as, well, she said it, so it's true. I mean, you're in an adversarial situation, and it's, perjury doesn't exist in family court. I don't care what anybody tells you. So did he at any point, so he had you go for that class and all that, but did he ever at that point order the children to see someone to be evaluated post-decision? Or, I mean, obviously he didn't pre-decision, so he's made this decision, made you go to a parenting class and so forth. Did part of that decision include getting therapy for the children or not? Because I'm curious on that.
No, but this is really a
That's
telling.
telling right there.
No therapy for the children. But what does my ex-wife do? She enrolls them in therapy with the same judge or the same therapist who's treated the judge.
Yeah, that's a big no-no. I mean, come on. The reason I wanted to point that out is what is the basis they say for all family court decisions? What's in the best interest of the
Best
children?
interest of the children.
Right? They
Best
hide behind that every way they can. In this instance, if everything he thought you did was true, just pure logic would say those children need to be in therapy, right? But yet he didn't order that. That tells me this isn't about the best interest of the children. He's got a vendetta. That's my opinion.
So let me. The story gets worse, and let me go ahead
And I'm sad to say it does. Go and continue.
But before I go on, I want to say these judges rely on experts. These experts are full of shit.
Mm.
You have therapists, you have counselors, you have child protective services. They're not experts. And I won't go down that road because I want to go ahead and progress with the story. But
Sure.
so over the next 8 months, I do everything in my power to reunite myself with my children. I undergo the forensic psychological evaluation. I take the 14-week parenting course. I go through anger management training, CBT training through the Veterans Administration. The therapist who's doing the forensic psychological evaluation, Dr. Christopher Lane, who, by the way, should not have a license, just disappears for 4.5 months. I'm trying to email him, trying to call him. My lawyer's trying to call him, just non-responsive. And he had done this previously with the original psychological evaluation of my ex-wife and myself for the pen de lite order. All of a sudden, he just shows up back on the grid. Hey, I'm back. And I'm like, where the hell have you been? Oh, don't worry. I'll get this forensic psychological evaluation done. So now imagine he could have had this evaluation done in 3 months. Mm-hmm. I have the 14-week parenting course, the evaluation, everything done. I go back to court and, say, hey, I've satisfied the court's requirements. But now for 8 months now, almost 9 months, I've been waiting on this evaluation. I can't do anything. And what does my lawyer say? Well, we can go out and get another evaluation. It'll cost you another $8,000. And anyway, get the psychological evaluation done. And in it, he makes determinations for custody, which was outside the scope of the forensic psychological evaluation. But at the end of the day, it said, Mr. Sisco is highly intelligent, has no patterns of this, has done this, well qualified to be a parent based upon what he's done, blah, blah, blah. Go back to court. Our lawyer's prepared. I have the certificates, I have everything, and I write the opening remarks because I want just to hammer home, that I have done everything. I went above and beyond, wrote a manuscript, started working on the war journal, did over 80 hours of investigation on parental alienation, blah, 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 blah. Mr. Damian McGarry is my lawyer. He's delivering the opening remarks, and I'll never forget this the rest of my life. Damian's saying, Mr. Sisco has proven himself to be a more than capable parent by raising 2 of his 3 children by himself for over a year. The judge interrupts the lawyer and says, do you believe that to be true, Mr. McGarry? Do you believe Mr. Sisco is a good father? And I look at the lawyer, he looks at me, and then he goes, yes, Your Honor, I do. And can I continue with my opening remarks? He was interrupted 2 more times in opening remarks.
Can I ask you, just not sorry to interrupt you, but what did your lawyer say to you afterward about that? Because that is so over the line as a judge. I mean,
so he didn't have an opportunity to speak to me because basically he looked at me, I looked at him, and I just was like, this was.
But did he say anything to you when you left the courtroom? I guess is what I'm asking.
Well, I'm going to tell you what happened. So. Okay. So my lawyer does the best job he can. Here's the parenting course. Here's the certificate. Here's this. Here's this. Here's this. Just delivers all of this stuff. Here's what Mr. Sisco has done, and an hour and a half later, we're done. And he rests his case, and the opposing counsel gets ready to say something, and the judge goes to the opposing counsel, Mr. Menzie, have you considered filing a motion to strike? And I don't know what a motion to strike is. Mm-hmm. I look at my lawyer. He looks at me. He grabs me by the arm and squeezes my arm.
Because he knows what's coming.
He knows what's coming.
Yep.
We go to lunch, and I'm like, hey, Damien, what the fuck is going on? And he goes, I don't know. But in my 20 years of practicing law, I've never seen a judge prompt the opposing counsel to file a motion. And I go, what does this mean? And he goes, I don't know, but I don't think it's going to work. I don't think it's going to work out well. We go back to court. The opposing counsel files a motion to strike. The judge awards the motion to strike, claiming there's been no material change in circumstances, awards $31,000 in legal fees, and just dismisses the case.
So for those that don't know, a motion to strike is basically throw out everything your lawyer said for the last hour and a half, you said? Something like that. That's essentially what it comes down to. So it was like it never happened. And that, again, the fact that the judge is telling the opposing attorney, hey, do this, highly unethical. Again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not versed on it, but I got to believe that's crossing the line legally, or at least calling into question this judge's neutrality. In all the times I've been in a courtroom, I've never once heard it either. If anything, it's on the opposing attorney to do that. And I wonder if that attorney was even thinking along those lines at that point. Probably not, I would assume.
No, he scrambled, came together with this motion to show cause. It was crap. And anyway, so let me continue.
Go ahead.
So I'm like, what the hell is going on? I turn around and there's 8 bailiffs standing behind me and my lawyer. And my lawyer looks at me and goes, what is this? And I go, oh, this is nothing. There was 10 for the custody trial. And he's like, this is insane. So we get out of court. He basically drops me as a client. He's like, there's nothing I can do for you, Mr. Sisco. I'm really sorry. He sent me like a beautiful email. Not that it helped, but.
No, but like, you know what? You got to give him credit at that point, because he could have just churned this for dollars. So credit where credit's due, even though it kind of sucks, right? But credit where credit's due.
Yeah. So what do? I am livid at this point. And
as you should be.
I'm calling lawyers. I'm like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? Everybody's like, I'm not touching your case. Not dealing with Judge Mann. Not after that motion to show cause. This is, you are toxic basically in this, in the family court in Fairfax. Anyway, I finally find a lawyer. He's a JAG. He's an Army JAG. I'm like, yeah, brother, what's up? Navy, Marine Corps, Army. I don't care what you're from. I'm hoping that you're going to help me out. Well, I take this lawyer on, and probably one of the biggest mistakes of my life. Again, totally unprepared. Caseload was too high. Was just a hot, just a red hot mess. I mean, ate up like a soup sandwich. And I laugh about it now, but it was so frustrating dealing with him. He files an appeal. I'm actually writing the appeal. And, because I was in court, I have the court transcripts. So I'm able to say, all these things. He's arguing, well, I don't want to do this, because once again, doesn't want to, go into an adversarial position against the judge. Mm-hmm. And file the appeal. And now the appeal is 9 months. I can't do anything for 9 months. We get the ruling from the appellate court. In this time, Judge Mann has moved from family court in Fairfax to the Supreme Court of Virginia,
which is a big step up.
His influence now is not only over Fairfax County, but all over Virginia. Mm-hmm. So he's making rulings, and doing things, and that, once again, he should not be practicing law. He should not be a judge. He should be removed. By the way, when people go through trauma, if you look at Judge Mann before his daughter was murdered, you look at him now, and I'm not being mean. The guy weighs about 300 pounds. He's and just as well as I do, when people have disorders or, issues, weight gain is a telling tale.
Oh, absolutely.
Anyway, and he's giving his ruling. He wouldn't even look at me. He's looking straight ahead, big fat guy, and doesn't even have the balls to look me in the eye, and it was just disgusting what happened. Anyway, appeal court, 9 months goes by. We get the decision back from the appellate court. My lawyer forgot to file the transcripts.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, are you effing kidding me? I've wasted 9 months,
probably tens of thousands of dollars. Yeah, I was going to say. And this is, by the way, for those listening, guys, I know a lot of you think, I'm just going to go file an appeal. This is what happens, right? One, when you're filing an appeal, you can't appeal the ruling. You have to find a legal reason or a legal violation, however terminology you want to use. They're not going to rule that, well, he's a good dad, he should get the kids. That's not what the appellate court's job is. They're looking at the case law and was law followed. And the very common thing I've heard time and time again is if you don't have your I's dotted and your T's crossed perfectly, they'll look for anything to throw it out. In your case, it was just not, because they could have said, hey, could you just send them to us? Problem solved. They're not going to do that. There isn't an appellate court out there that's going to do that.
So let me say a couple things. Number one, this whole time my ex-wife is hanging up Skype calls, ending them prematurely, not allowing any visitation in custody, Christmas, their birthdays, nothing, can't even call them for an extra 20 minutes, and ending over 6 hours of Skype calls, and in a terrible way. She would turn the computer towards her so I could see her, and would say things like, nope, you're not going to talk about that. Goodbye. And I mean, it got really terrible for me. I mean, when you have to deal with this time and time again, of course you're going to get mad. Am I going to sit there and say, why are you acting like a piece of shit? Or why are you doing it? Yeah. What man wouldn't? What person wouldn't?
No human being wouldn't.
So she uses all this as evidence. And she's going to take me back to court now and saying that I'm abusive, I'm using foul language, I'm doing this, and her lawyer's turning the screws. At the same time, I'm dealing with Matt Hughes. Listen, I don't know if I get in trouble for this, but anybody who's seeking a lawyer in Fairfax, do not take Matt Hughes on as a lawyer. I mean, it was probably the most unprofessional person I've ever met in my life. As in the military, I had to deal with full spectrum of people, and employees and soldiers and airmen. And he was the worst I have ever dealt with. He should not be practicing law. Right now, his malpractice insurance company is investigating him, and they're going to hopefully return some of the funds that were squandered. But anyway, that's an aside. Let's go back to the real issue. I'm like, what am I supposed to do now? My ex-wife has taken me back to court twice. 2 motions to show cause, has won another $26,000 in legal fees and another $36,000 in legal fees. I have, I represented myself the last time because I was like, I'm done paying lawyers to lose.
Right.
And I go in front of a judge, and, she was former Marine Corps JAG officer. She knew what I was going through. She had to rule in favor of my ex-wife, but she was like, I mean, I was winning. I won objections. My cross-examination was great, but she ultimately, because the final order of divorce, if I lose on one of 3 issues, I have to pay all the legal fees. And what is her scumbag lawyer doing? Jacking up legal fees. What is my ex-wife doing? She's copying her lawyer on every email.
Right. So then he's got to read it. Minimum 7 minutes, most lawyers, 7 minutes billing at hundreds of dollars an hour. It just gens it up. And he's probably telling her, send me everything so that I can read it, because he knows, or he or she, I guess it's a he, right?
Got
Uh,
an email this morning. Get an email this morning from my ex-wife. Oh, since I'm going to France tomorrow or today, I'll be there tomorrow. Oh, we can't do the Skype call at this time. Can we do it at another time? Copy's her lawyer. You
yeah,
know?
and he's got to read that. Now you're going to have to pay however much it is. Let's just take a nice easy number. Let's say it's $600, and let's say he bills at 10-minute increments. That's $60 right there to read what, a couple sentence email or paragraph. And this is what goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Why lawyers are scum. I'm sorry, a lot of them. This guy clearly is trying to gin up money, transfer wealth from you to him. That's essentially
Well,
what it is.
let me go back. So when this whole thing first started, I'm representing myself. We're in front of the judge, different judge, and this was like a preliminary hearing, and the judge doesn't want to hear it. He's like, "Can't you two go to mediation?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll go to mediation." We go into mediation with another lawyer, and this scumbag lawyer tries to like, you know, kind of blackmail me, kind of like, push me over, and he doesn't know who he's dealing with. And basically, I'm like, "No, Joe, that's not what you said. Joe, this is not the amount of money. Joe, I'm not going to deal with that." Well, will you take this? No, I'm not taking this. This is not. You're not blackmailing me. We go back in front of the judge, and he goes on this 5-minute hyperbolic fucking speech about everything. And the judge listens to him, and then the judge's like, "Mr. Sisco," and very succinctly, I go, point one, point two, point three, point four, boom. And I'm like, "I'm done." And the judge looks at me, goes, "Thank you." He goes back to Joe Menzi, and he's like, "Mr. Menzi, do you have anything?" And he goes on his little hyperbolic rant for another 3 or 4 minutes. And the judge finally interrupts and he goes, "Mr. Menzi, are you done?" And he goes, you could tell he was like, "Well, no, but yeah, I can finish." He goes, "You have lost all credibility with the court."
Wow.
So
Wow. That you have to understand something because I've been in that situation. For someone to say that, wow. That
I'm not a lawyer, but I
right.
look over at him and I look at the judge and I go, "That can't be good."
Well, you
So,
got. I mean, I like I've talked about earlier. I was there when the judge in my case told the law guardian he knows the law better than you. I got to
yeah,
be honest. It was one of the sweetest moments of my life. And
yeah.
even though I won that case, but even though I had to deal with her later on, I always knew that she knew what the judge said. So I had to feel pretty sweet at least.
Yeah, it did. But here's the point. This has become personal.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
and Joe Menzi, and I'm not going to talk about his personal life. You can go check him out on Facebook and you'll know what he's about. Has no integrity, has violated the Virginia State Bar Code of Ethics and Professional on numerous occasions over the past 2 years. Does not respond to emails. Does lied. Blatantly lied. So now I take this to his law firm and I'm like, "You need to be aware of this." One of his partners is a former JAG, Navy JAG. "I have just put you on notice. If Mr. Menzi continues with this behavior, I will hold you and your law firm accountable."
Hmm.
And why am I telling you this story and everybody out there? Because you have no recourse unless you have this documentation. And even when you do, it's hard for the Virginia bar or anyone, unless you want to, launch a civil suit, and then that is really hard to win
Mm-hmm.
because it's really opinion. But I've built up so much evidence and facts against this lawyer and this law firm, and I've engaged with a 501c3, veterans fathers, and maybe I shouldn't be giving away my cards, but things have to change. And I'm not going to be that guy who just continues to get kicked in the junk. And people have to be held accountable. Judge Mann has to be held accountable. Dr. Christopher Lane has to be held accountable. Joe Menzi has to be held accountable.
Mm-hmm.
My ex-wife has to be held accountable. She will be held accountable by my children when they get older.
Well, that's a very key point you just made there because As I said way back in the beginning when we were talking, children know what's going on. And your children are stuck in the middle right now. And I have been that child. I was a victim of parental alienation as a child and as a parent. And, you know, they have to live with her. So they're going to, unfortunately, side with her, at least on the outside, even though internally they're struggling, because that's what I went through, right? When my mother was doing what she was doing, and I would sit there and go, yes, mom, because I knew if I didn't, my life was going to be a living hell, because she would take it out on me. Every situation is different, but internally I was going, no. No, 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 no. And ultimately, when I turned 18, actually when I was 16, I walked out the door. I was able to do that. It's horrific what it does to children. So, and that's kind of where I want to go with this. And I know you want to make a point.
Hold on one second.
All right, go ahead.
I forgot to mention this. And this is kind of like you reminded me of this. I walked out of the courtroom, and we're talking about the original custody trial. I walk out of the courtroom. The judge makes me sit there for like a half an hour when my ex-wife, is taking the kids away. I have 8 bailiffs around me. They escort me out of the courtroom and to the parking lot. I get in my car. I'm driving home. I'm like, what the fuck just happened?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's like I'm in a state of shock. I get home. You know, I have all the kids' stuff around. There's you know, a model battleship on the dining room table. Their paints, you know, backpacks, all this stuff. And all of a sudden, my phone starts blowing up. Text messages, ting, ting, ting. And I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to even look at anything. I'm just like, I just don't want to deal with it. And reluctantly, I look at the phone. I'm getting text messages from my daughter from my son's iPad. Daddy, help us. Daddy, please respond. Now, I'm not allowed to respond to the children. I'm not allowed to talk to them. So it's very clear. If you do anything, I will hold you in contempt of court. I will put you in jail. I am getting a series of text messages nonstop. Liz just slapped me. Help me, Daddy, please. Daddy, can I call 911? Please, Daddy, we're going to die here. Don't let me do this.
Wow.
Shorty's not here. My youngest daughter wasn't there. She was with her friend Christina, my wife's friend, ex-wife's friend. And I'm reading these things just like, oh my God, what am I supposed to do? It was the worst feeling that I had ever experienced. And I told you what happened to me in Desert Storm. And for people who were on the podcast, I had a very good friend die, right by me, and I found out things about that and that is nothing compared to how I felt receiving these text messages from my daughter and not being able to do anything.
I mean, to me, Jim, it speaks to the quality of man that you are, that you, knowing that you should have done something, I guess is the way I'll put it, or definitely wanted to do something, but knowing that if you did, not only were you going to suffer, but your kids were going to suffer even more. That I've been through hell. I can't even fathom what you dealt with. And I want to express to you, one, that I admire you for still being here, because I know the effect it has. And I have dealt with guys who've been through things like this, and unfortunately, they unalive themselves. Yeah. And it, it's one of the key indicators you see for men killing themselves is family court. And I'm like almost, my mind is gone right now because of hearing all this, right? Because I just genuinely feel for you.
It gets better too. I mean, my ex-wife goes and says that I trespassed on her property, and because I dropped off like her things and put them on her porch. Files a trespassing order. I get a call from the police, and they're like, "We have an outstanding bench warrant for your arrest." I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "For what?" Like trespassing. And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" And then I go down there and they tell me what it's about, and I'm like, "Well, we're really sorry." So then on a custody exchange, when I still had the kids, I'm supposed to pick them up from her house. I'm texting her, I'm calling her. It's 6:30. I'm like, I go up to the door, ring the doorbell, and she opens the door and she goes, "You're violating the trespassing order," and then has me brought to court for trespassing,
Mm-hmm.
and wants to take all my guns, wants to have order the whatever,
TRO,
you know,
temporary restraining order. Yeah.
temporary. And the judge looks at her and goes, "This doesn't warrant a temporary restraining order." But then they had all this stuff. Anyway, so you're seeing what I'm dealing with.
Right, right. And so,
And so let's go back. I want to move forward because
well,
let's
that's where
always
I
move.
was going to say. So, where are you at right now? Is my next question.
So where I'm at right now, I just lost my last motion to show cause. I have to pay $65,000 in legal fees. My ex-wife retained my personal property. She owes me $14,000 in that. I've paid $19,000 in unreimbursed medical expenses that she won't pay me back. I hired a lawyer, retained a lawyer to help me, file the motions and do everything. I filed a motion to retain or increase custody and visitation. I filed a motion to show cause to get the personal property back and money back. And that's where I'm at. And my ex-wife continues to not allow for any increased visitation and custody, which at this point, I'm going to tell you very honestly, I don't feel like they're my kids anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why is I get on the Skype calls. My son, all he does is play Xbox. His hair's long. He doesn't play rugby. He's, on my ex-wife put him on ADHD medicine. He weighs like 80 pounds. I joke around and say, "You look like an Ethiopian." Uh, we get on the Skype calls. I'm like, "Hey, try to be excited. What's going on, kids?" Nothing, nothing, nothing. They don't want to talk. My oldest daughter, she's got acrylic nails, earrings, like 4 earrings in her ear. My youngest daughter has her own TikTok channel. And everything that I tried to do to raise them properly, instill good values and things like that has been eroded because my ex-wife, all she knows, and I call her an Uber mom. She's great at scheduling things and driving them here and driving there, does not have a relationship with them and just buys them things. "Oh, you want a guinea pig? Here. Oh, you want to go here? Oh, you want this? You want that?" And that is because she's a product of her environment. That's all her father knew how to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the relationship she has with my children is superficial. And she appeases them by giving them things, letting them do whatever they want. And it's hard for me to do the Skype calls because I'm like, who are these kids?
Right.
And then the other thing is, I'm going to give this piece of advice to every man out there, or woman. If you're in my situation, you can take 2 paths. You can take a path where you start listening to the voices, therapists, counselors, lawyers, and they will tear you apart and they will rip you apart and they will make you believe what they believe to be true. And if you don't have the will or the strength or the fortitude to look inside yourself and go, "I am not that person they're trying to tell me I am," you don't go down that path.
Mm-hmm.
Don't start questioning yourself. I mean, if you are an abusive person, get help. But if you're not who they're portraying you to be, don't believe them, because that will take you down a terrible path. The other thing I will advise everybody to do is maintain your own self, your being. Work out, stay consistent, do the things that you need to do for your professional life, your career, your mental health. I mean, I'm dating. I have a wonderful girlfriend right now. I work out every day consistently. I played rugby. I had a good friend network. Those were the things that got me through it. And the other thing I did, and we'll talk about this later, is I wrote a book. And I wrote a best-selling book. And that was the therapy that I needed. So anyway, I've talked enough. And
well, that's where I want to kind of go, Jim, now is, so knowing your situation as it is now, and I think you can give some insight to the guys that are going through similar situations, knowing your military background and the training you've had and all that. And we had this conversation the other day. The question I'm going to throw out there, and I think you know what's coming, is do you think your military training and background has helped you to survive this? I know what the answer is, but I want the audience to hear it.
It's yes. So when I thought about it more, it's yes and no. Because when you first asked me, I said no.
Right.
And I'm going to tell everybody in the audience this. I have special forces training. I've parachuted and scuba. I mean, I've done like all this stuff and gone through amphibious reconnaissance school and pushed myself to the limits physically and mentally. No, it does not prepare you for what you experience in the family court system, because I had all the training and resources and technology and wherewithal and friends. You go to family court, you're alone and unafraid.
Right.
You don't have the resources. You don't have the training. You don't have the insights. You have to rely upon people who do not act in your best interest and don't care about you and do not care about your kids. I asked my second lawyer in a meeting one day, what are my children's names? And he looked at me and went,
They never know. Yeah.
So the point being is, no, you are not prepared as a veteran for the family court system. However, my training gave me the resilience to not off myself, to focus my efforts.
Exactly what I was going to say. Yep. Yeah, I mean that's and you and I know had this conversation the other day, but I've heard the same thing from veterans. Right? Is they walk into family court, guys who have served all over the world, been in combat and all that, and almost universally they'll say to me, I none of that prepared me per se for family court, because I knew in the military I had my brothers with me. They almost always call it brothers or something like that. My unit was there. I had the backing of the guys next to me, but I also knew I had the guys behind me and the logistics and all that. Everyone was there to support me. I had no one when I was in family court, because the problem that a lot of guys don't understand is even your own family don't know how to handle this. They may try and be there for you, but they don't know how, because they don't, unless they've had the experience, right? Which some have, some haven't. But it just speaks volumes to how shocking it is to the system for men when you walk into family court, that men who have been through horrific combat scenarios, lost people, like you said, you lost a friend next to you, to then say, yeah, that's nothing compared to family court. Let that sink in, people, because that is mind-numbing to me.
Yeah, the other thing that I wanted to bring up that we didn't talk about last time is the personal nature of family court. They get into everything, and when you're in combat or even just training or doing whatever, it's not your kids. You involve your children, and if you're a good parent and you're a good father, you're like, what if you ask any of my kids, what's your dad's job? They'll be like, oh, he's the president of Nota Global. And they're like, no, what's his real job? To prepare us for life. And that's what they say. And you ask them, what do Siscos do? And they'll say, Siscos don't lie, cheat, or steal. I've ingrained that in them. But the personal nature of family court, when they involve your children and you can't protect your children. I mean, there's times in the days that I thought, I know where Judge Mann lives. I know where Joe Menzie lives. I know where these people live. I know where they work. Because of the personal nature of them involving my children and now impacting my children's lives. Are my children ever going to recover from this? At this point, I say, I don't know, and I don't care. And that may sound callous, but I have not been able to do any of the things as a parent. I have not been able to make any decisions. This all falls on the judge, the lawyers, my ex-wife. And if my kids go down a bad path, I'll be there for them as a father. But this was not my doing. And I will not take any responsibility for that.
Yeah, that said, my friend, I will tell you, because I'm in that scenario even now, and I agree with everything you said, but you'll still feel guilty about it. I mean, I do. I mean, my oldest son went through some really difficult times. And I remember sitting there going, because at that point he was with my ex, and I have not spoken to him in 22 years, my oldest son. I've tried, I've reached out, I've given up trying to. because at some point I have to put myself first, my mental well-being, my physical well-being. And I tried for a long time. My second wife did everything she could, but we just couldn't overcome what was being done to him by my ex-wife. And to see what he was going through, he dropped out of high school and all this stuff. I knew it was not my fault. I knew that I had done everything I could up to the point, because he lived with me for a number of years. I mean, I had custody of him. But now as I look back, that guilt is there. And to speak to the question about, will your children recover from this? They can. I have. But to say that it has not made me who I am, first of all, in positive and negative ways, I might add, okay? But to think that I don't, on a daily basis, look back at that time in some way or manner and go, what did I do to my father? Right? My father was a good man. He really was. But we had a difficult relationship, not from him not trying or me not trying, but my mother did everything she could to destroy it. And to anyone watching this, and I'll say it to mothers, but if you're a father doing this, if you're trying to destroy the relationship your children have with the other parent, you're evil. And you will get no quarter from me. I will not give you a pass on anything. Short of them being a serial killer, you have no reason to do this other than your own vindictiveness or sickness, to be honest with you. Because I do believe you have to be mentally ill to do something like this to your children. You may think you're doing it against your ex. You're not. You're doing it to your children. And that's why I get very passionate of it. Sorry I got on a soapbox there.
No, listen. I wish my ex-wife would go, Jim, I'm sorry. I fucked up. And I'm not allowed to say anything because it'll be used against me. But
right.
I have a phrase, and this doesn't apply to my ex-wife. You can't fix stupid.
Right.
And
right.
I really wish that, and if she came to me tomorrow and said, listen, I'm not going to do 50-50 custody, but you can see the kids every other weekend. And, I know it's important for children, especially at this age, to have a father in their lives. And, maybe my vengeance or my greed or my whatever, overcame my common sense. And I'd be like, hey, man, let's let bygones be bygones. I will put everything behind us. I don't give a fuck about the money. And let's co-parent. Mm-hmm. She refuses to do it. There's a testament to my character.
Yep.
And that is a testament to her mental well-being.
Well,
I'm not going to say anything else.
You beat me to what I was going to say. Is that exactly the words you used? I was going to say that's a testament to your character and the man you are and the father you are. And it's also a testament to the mother she is. And I don't mean that in any way kind. I can say it. You can't. So go ahead.
I want to do something. I'm not, and anybody who knows me, anybody who's my friend, anybody who's worked for me, worked with me, I'm a positive guy. I'm always trying to be positive. We're going to look at this podcast and go, wow, this guy has gotten screwed every which way. Guess what? I want to end on a positive note. I want to talk about, and I'm going to tell everybody, this is not about me selling books. This has a deeper meaning. And, oh, by the way, I've already offered to give the proceeds to this book to the 501c3 that's helping me out. I want to talk about my book for 2 minutes, and here's why.
Oh, absolutely. I wanted to go there myself, so go ahead.
Because there's so much positive that came from this book. So, anyway, it's called The War Journal. While I was in the darkest period of my life, going through the therapy, going through the CBT training, one of the therapists asked me, have you ever journaled? And I said, yeah, when I was in Desert Storm. I actually wrote a journal every day or every couple of days when I was in Desert Storm. And when I was talking to somebody on a podcast, I mentioned the journal. She said, send it to me. I sent it to her. She's like, this is awesome. Can I send it to my publicist? And I was like, I don't even know what a publicist is. Sure, go ahead. And the publicist called me within an hour and she goes, you have a #1 bestseller here. And I was like, okay, whatever, sure. She said, you have to write this book. And I said, okay. I put my nose into it. And actually, I read the journal that night. And when I did, I got done. And, I'm not an emotional guy, but I was like almost tearing up and was like, wow. this is some profound shit that I wrote when I was 19 years old that I didn't even know. It was intuitive at the time, but I didn't even know how it would impact my life. Wrote the book, came out, became a bestseller within a couple weeks, and I don't care about that. What I care about was one night I was sitting, and I told you the story, Dan. And one night I was
Right.
sitting in my living room by myself, and the phone rings. I look down at the phone, don't know the number. It's like, oh well, it's like Russian roulette. It's either a telemarketer or somebody you don't want to talk to. I picked it up, and this guy was like, "Hey," and I always answer the phone. Good evening, Jim Sisco, and he's like, "Hey, Jim, my name is Steve. You don't know who I am, but I wanted to give you a call. You have a couple of minutes. I want to talk to you. I read your book," and I'm like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." And he's like, "Hey, I was in the Marines, and I wanted to let you know I read your book, and I really loved it." And I was like, "Hey, thanks a lot," And he said, "No, it was really powerful, and it moved me, and I have to tell you about it." I'm like, "Okay, great." And he goes, "I was at the darkest period of my life, and I was thinking about killing myself. And I saw the podcast, I saw the book, and man, it was incredible. It changed my life. If you can go through what you've gone through, I can deal with what I'm dealing with." And I was like, "Okay, awesome, thanks." I didn't really know what to do, and just thanked him. We talked for a little while longer, and I said, "Well, if you ever need anything, call me. You got my number." And I haven't spoken to him since, but hopefully he's doing well. And then the other thing is, I got an email from a therapist at Wounded Warrior Project, and it was an awesome email. She said, "Reading your book has helped me deal with veterans in a way that I could never deal with them before." So this book is not the Ark of the Covenant or Shangri-La or the Rosetta Stone or anything. It's not going to help everybody, but it provides insights and through my experiences that talk about faith, education, relationships, death, betrayal, things like that can help anybody in their lives. They're universal, these lessons, and they transcend race, gender, ethnicity. And the reason I wrote the book really was to help people and going through situations like mine. And it talks about these things that happened to me in Desert Storm, but I talk about and provide commentary how they were part of my life up to and including the divorce, and how I realized that I didn't love my ex-wife in a way that was healthy. I was in a relationship based upon these reasons, and I grew so much in this dark period, and I want people to grow from that. And that's all I'm going to say about the book.
Well, one thing that was interesting that you said to me the other day is I think it was 19-year-old self. You said your 19-year-old self, and I'm paraphrasing, is basically educating your current self through that book, right? And I have not read the book yet. I am definitely going to be reading it. I'm going to order it. It's available on Amazon, if I remember correctly. I will put a link to the show notes so you can go get the book, and I'm going to encourage everyone to go get it because I have read similar books. And I will be honest with you, I like to read military history, especially from the people that have been in the battles. I grew up in the 60s, 70s reading about the greatest generation, the World War II, and I read the book. I don't like to read the history books. I like to read the stories of the men who were actually in it. And again, I had my father and uncles had lived through it, and I heard their stories. You get nuggets from that, all of that can help you in your life. Yeah. And like Jim is talking about, whatever struggles you're dealing with, reading a book such as his can help you, because the number one thing that you'll learn is you aren't the only one dealing with this stuff. Here is a gentleman that at 19 was in combat dealing with things that I can't even fathom, right? And had the wherewithal to journal about it, and then was able to use that to help other people. That, my friend, says it all about you. That speaks to the man you are, and I appreciate you for doing that. I appreciate you for your service, as I said way back in the beginning, but I appreciate that you made yourself vulnerable, because writing that down in a journal is one thing. Putting it out for the world to see, that's a whole other level. And to then know that it's now helping people. You've already saved one life, for sure, most likely. God knows how many others you will. So I encourage people to go pick up the book and read it. And I'm not saying that because Jim's sitting in front of me here on the screen. All right. I don't want anybody thinking that I'm not going to make a dime off of this. All right. I nor would I accept one. I would say the same thing you did. Go donate it.
Hey, I'll put this out there. If there's anybody who can't afford it, I'll send them a PDF of it.
There you go. There you go.
But what I would like to do is I just want to read one passage. Now, this is what happened. So it's Christmas. I get a care package from a friend. She gives me a journal and a pen and says, I want you to write in this journal so when you come home that I could see the war through your eyes. I was like, Roger that. So I wrote every day or every other day, and I just wrote what I thought or what I experienced. And I want to read just a passage, and I dated them, and in the book is the dates of each of the entries. This one's February 27th, 28th. The ground war had kicked off. We had just ended the war, basically. It only lasted 96 hours. My friend had been blown up by a hand grenade the day before the ground war started. I was the first person there to see him. His arms were gone, powder burn, anyway. And then I found out that he had been cheating. My girlfriend had been cheating on me with him. I found out afterwards. So all of these emotions happen. I go to combat. We're in combat, and then I write the day after the war ends. Today we saw our third mission, which was to go back where we were the day before and look the area over for any POWs we might have missed and weapons that might have been left back. Sounds pretty good, huh? Well, we weren't allowed to leave our vehicles, so how does one accomplish this mission? As I stand here and listen to Pink Floyd on my Sony Walkman, the war, as I know it, is now over. Rumors of leaving are already being spread. My thoughts of the future are still blurry, but I must accomplish a couple things. And then I took a pause and I went out and smoked a couple cigarettes and drank some Jack Daniels from my canteen that I wasn't allowed to have. And then I came back and I probably wrote one of the most profound things that I've ever written in my life. And I still get tingly when I think about it and read it. I must enter again and try to tell you how I feel. I don't think anyone was really changed by this. Maybe they think they have, but not really. I know I have aged in years that cannot be counted on my face, but I can see. I have felt pain that I should not forget, so I will write to remind me in case I do forget. Don't forget the pain you have felt in death, betrayal, stress, and hatred. Know that there is a woman out there that will love you as much as you will love her and be happy and never need another forever. Also, find education because it can never be taken away from you. Thank you, God, for listening to my thoughts. I feel for once in my life you are watching. Just remember.
And you wrote those words, powerful words, in 1991?
Yeah, February 1991.
And they apply every bit as much right now. Profound words. I don't know that we can follow that up with anything more, Jim, because it was fantastic. So let's kind of round things out here. I do want people to be able to follow you because I know you have a TikTok account. So if people wanted to follow, because I know you talk about your journey and what's going on, if people wanted to like follow up with you, or if they wanted to reach out to you, how can they do so?
Yeah, I have a Facebook page. It's Sisco's Fight for His Children, and I also basically have my TikTok channel, Comment Sense, and I know I talk a lot about my situation, but I also try to make comments to posts and what I see. I believe that I never think I'm smarter than anyone. I'm not, I have a college degree, I have a master's degree, I have 55 years of experience, got all this cool stuff I've done. But I try to just bring some common sense to life and to, I have built enough human capital in my life where I can speak on a number of topics. I've done commentary on Fox News and been on the Brent Bear show. And And that stuff means nothing to me. It's really helping people out. And, if there's people who have questions and people are struggling, I'm in a great point in my life where, I think I have some knowledge and wisdom that I can help people. And that's what I try to do through my TikTok platform and, comment sense. So that's what it is. And listen, if anybody ever needs anything or needs to reach out or feels like they're, in a dark place and wants to talk, I'm happy to help. Just hit me up on TikTok and I'm happy to help you out.
And I want to say I will put the links to your various social medias down in the show notes also, and I appreciate you doing what you're doing. It's very similar to the reason I do what I do. Us OGs, old guys.
Speak for yourself. I'm in my prime.
Hey,
I'm in my prime.
You still got hair too. I don't. But I think it's incumbent on us to share our experiences with the younger guys. It's why this podcast exists. It's why you're doing what you're doing, writing the book. And I know you're going to be coming out with a podcast also. To the younger folks, I say, look, I know to you we're these two old white guys who don't know anything because, when I was 20 years old, I wouldn't listen to a 60 or 50-year-old. Listen to us because what we've lived is reality. And just take from it, listen, and take from it what you will, because you can improve your life that way. And that's the whole reason Jim does what he does. It's why I do what I do. Jim, I truly, truly thank you for coming on and sharing your story. I thank you for your service also. I know you're probably sick of hearing me saying that, but I'm not going to stop saying it because I appreciate you. As I said earlier, one of the regrets I have is I did not serve in the military. I had an opportunity. It did not work out, and I walked away. And I appreciate you and everyone that worked and served with you for what you did, because you made the sacrifice that I wasn't able to. And I, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for that. I thank you for doing what you're doing now. I'm here if you need help, if you need someone to talk to. And we've talked about this already, but we're going to have Jim back on the podcast to talk about some other things. I'll just leave it at that right now. Let the suspense linger. We'll go from there. So, Jim, I just want to give you one final shot. Anything else you want to share with the audience before we close things up?
I do. Here's what I want to share. I am very fortunate to be on your podcast, and I do appreciate you having me as a guest. I really enjoy what you're trying to do, and using TikTok and your other platforms as a mechanism. There's such I try to capture it. What's happening within our society between men and women? What's happening with parents and all of the things that are occurring? We need leaders. We need people, and I'm not saying I'm one of them. We just need people to be able to help others and be a voice of reason and interject some common sense. Mm-hmm. And Dan, that's what why I started looking at your podcast and following you. Are we all perfect role models? No. Do I have my flaws? Yeah. But I'll tell you what I've done and what I've accomplished in my life and the things that I still have ahead of me. I'm going to France tonight to go play rugby with a over 50 league, and I'm going to go watch the World Cup. And my life is just beginning. And I want people to understand that it's all about your attitude. It's all about your perspective. It's having a good group of friends, or having, these channels that you can watch and listen to. If I can help anybody in any way, I will bend over backwards. And I believe that, Dan is the same person. And, if you don't like me personally, you don't like Dan, maybe just listen to the words and hopefully you can learn. And that's how I want to end this call, on a positive note, and compliment you on what you're doing also.
Well, thank you for that. And I have nothing further to add because it was perfect what you just said. It summed it up perfectly. So thank you again for coming on, Jim. All right, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. So, hey, do me a favor to help Jim and I out. If you have enjoyed this podcast, give it a like, please consider sharing it, because both of us are trying to help people out, as Jim just talked about. And the best way you can help us to do that is to share this and to share your story along with it. So liking, sharing, of course, subscribe to the channel, because, hey, if you subscribe to it, you'll get to see the future videos too. So I've done a couple dozen podcasts at this point, and there's many more to come, some really interesting topics. And again, much like Jim just said, we're trying to help guys out. And it's both guys and girls, because to be honest with you, in society, when both genders, both sexes are doing the best they can, all of society benefits. It should not be a war between the sexes. On that note, I'm going to leave it. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on Men Need to Be Heard.